You are standing on wet mud beside an ancient lake. Something huge splashes in the reeds. A giant stork stalks the shallow's hippo's grunt nearby, and two sets of human-like footprints cross the same shore within hours of each other. One belongs to a powerful plant eater with crushing jaws. The other belongs to a restless omnivore with a bigger brain. Only one branch will still matter when the climate turns against them. About 1.5 million years ago, near what is now Kubi Fora in Kenya, two different kinds of ancient relatives walked across the same lakeshore. One was probably Homo erectus, a member of the genus that eventually leads to you. The other was probably Paranthropus boisei, a side branch with a skull built like a chewing machine. This was not a battle with spears. This was not one tribe wiping out another. This was a slower contest, fought through teeth, stomachs, tools, movement, and the brutal question every living thing has to answer. What can you eat when the world changes? For a long time, Paranthropus looked like the safer bet. It had enormous molars. It had thick enamel, the hard outer coating of the teeth. It had massive cheekbones, and a ridge along the top of the skull called a sagittal crest, where huge chewing muscles could attach. That sounds powerful. That sounds specialized. That sounds like survival. When Mary Leakey found the famous skull OH5 at Olduvai Gorge in 1959, the press nicknamed it Nutcracker Man because its face looked built to crack open hard foods. The jaw was broad. The teeth were huge. The skull looked less like a delicate thinker and more like a biological clamp. But fossils can trick you. A skull tells you what an animal could do. It does not always tell you what the animal did every day. Decades later, researchers tested the chemistry locked inside Paranthropus teeth. Thur Serling and his colleagues studied carbon isotopes in Paranthropus boisei. Isotopes are tiny chemical signatures that can reveal what kinds of plants ended up in an animal's body. Their 2011 study showed that Paranthropus boisei ate a diet dominated by C4 foods, mostly grasses or sedges, the grass-like plants that grow near water. That was strange. This supposed nutcracker may not have been cracking many nuts. Peter Ungar and other dental microware researchers looked at the microscopic scratches and pits on Paranthropus teeth. Dental microware means the tiny damage left on teeth by chewing. If an animal constantly cracks hard nuts, the teeth usually show certain patterns. But Paranthropus boisei did not look like a permanent nut-crushing machine. It looked more like a specialist in large amounts of tough, low-quality plant food. So picture it. Not a monster chewing rocks. A compact, upright hominin sitting near wetlands, grinding through stems, sedges, roots, and fibrous plant matter hour after hour. It had a body plan for a dependable world. If the right plant foods were there, Paranthropus had the equipment to process them. But what happens when dependable food stops being dependable? Now look at the other track. Homo erectus did not have jaws that impressive. Its teeth were smaller, its face was less flared, its chewing system was not as extreme. At first glance, that seems like a weakness. But the weakness was the clue. Homo was not built around one answer. Homo was built around options. By at least 2.6 million years ago, long before Homo erectus fully appears, some hominins were using sharp stone tools and leaving cut marks on animal bones. Brianna Pobiner of the Smithsonian has explained that cut marks are some of the strongest evidence for meat and marrow eating because a stone flake slicing flesh leaves a different mark than a carnivore tooth. At places like Gona in Ethiopia, Kangera in Kenya, Kubi Fora in Kenya, and Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, bones and tools show a new way of feeding. Your ancestors were not simply hunters in the modern sense. They were opportunists. They could gather fruit, they could dig tubers, they could crack bones for marrow, they could scavenge a carcass after lions were done, they could carry a sharp flake from one place to another, they could turn a dead animal into food not with claws, but with planning. That difference matters. A lion has teeth, a vulture has wings. Homo had hand-stone memory and a growing brain. The brain is expensive. Even today, the human brain uses a large share of the body's energy, much more than its size would suggest. A bigger brain is not free. It demands calories every day. It demands fat, protein, and reliable fuel. So why would evolution favor it? Because in a changing world, the brain was not just an organ. It was a survival tool. Around 2 million years ago, East Africa was not a stable postcard savanna. It shifted. Lakes expanded and shrank. Woodlands opened. Grasslands spread. Rainfall changed. River corridors moved. Animals came and went. Rick Potts of the Smithsonian calls this idea variability selection. That means natural selection may favor creatures that can handle change itself, not just one perfect environment. This is where the contest becomes unfair. Paranthropus was good at processing certain plant resources. Homo was good at changing the question. If fruit was gone, Homo could look for tubers. If tubers were scarce, Homo could search for eggs. If an antelope carcass lay near the lake, Homo could use a stone flake. If one valley dried out, Homo could walk farther. If a tool broke, Homo could make another. This does not mean Homo was smarter in the way a modern person imagines intelligence. No one was doing math under an acacia tree. No one was inventing cities. But even small increases in planning, memory cooperation, and tool use could change the odds. A few seconds of foresight could mean carrying a sharp stone. A little social learning could mean copying where another individual found food. A slightly better walking body could mean reaching the next patch before starvation. That is how evolution often works. Not genius, margin. Now return to the lakeshore at Kubifora. In 2024, Kevin Hatala and colleagues published footprint evidence showing two different hominin track patterns on the same ancient surfaces, likely Homo erectus and Paranthropus boisei. Footprints are powerful because they capture a moment. Bones can mix across centuries, sediments can move, but footprints are behavior frozen in mud. One species walked with a more human-like foot, the other carried a different foot shape. They were not separated by millions of years in a textbook chart. They were neighbors. They may have seen the same birds. They may have heard the same predators. They may have smelled the same carcasses in the heat. So why did one branch vanish? Paranthropus survived for a long time. That part matters. It was not a failed creature. It was not stupid. It lasted hundreds of thousands of years through difficult landscapes. Natural selection does not keep a bad design around that long. But specialization is a bargain. It gives you power in exchange for risk. A panda can live beautifully on bamboo until bamboo becomes scarce. A koala can turn eucalyptus into a lifestyle until the forest changes. Paranthropus had its own version of that bargain. Its chewing system was extraordinary, but it tied more of its survival to a narrower food strategy. Homo made a messier bargain. Smaller teeth, more tools, longer movement, more social learning, more dietary chaos, and chaos can be useful. An omnivore is not just an animal that eats plants and meat. An omnivore is an animal that can switch. It can treat the landscape like a menu with bad handwriting. It can take calories where they appear. It can fail at one food and still survive on another. That flexibility becomes priceless when climate becomes unpredictable. The counterintuitive twist is that Homo may not have won because it was perfectly adapted. Homo may have won because it was less perfectly adapted. A perfect specialist fits one world like a key fits a lock. But when the lock changes, the perfect key becomes useless. A generalist is uglier, less elegant, less optimized, but it can keep trying doors. That is the deeper story of your lineage. Your ancestors were not the strongest chewers. They were not the biggest animals. They were not the fastest runners. They were not the best predators. They were the survivors who could change plans. The shift toward omnivory did not mean meat alone made you human. That idea is too simple. Scientists still debate how much meat mattered, how often early Homo hunted versus scavenged, and whether some evidence is shaped by which sites have been studied most. But the bigger pattern is clear enough to feel in your own body. Your teeth are mixed tools. Your hands can prepare food before it reaches your mouth. Your stomach expects variety. Your brain is constantly scanning for alternatives. Even modern cravings carry ancient echoes: sweet fruit, fatty meat, roasted smells, crunchy textures, warm food shared in a group. These are not random preferences. They are memories written into biology by ancestors who survived uncertain menus. Paranthropus shows another possible you, a cousin branch, a powerful experiment, a creature that placed its bet on jaws, molars, and the reliable return of certain plants. Homo placed its bet on flexibility. Not one food, not one habitat, not one answer. And when lakes dried, forests shifted, grasslands spread, and carcasses appeared in dangerous places, the messy omnivore kept finding ways to eat. That is why this story is not really vegetarian versus meat eater. It is specialist versus improviser. It is the crushing jaw versus the changing mind. It is the ancient lesson that survival does not always belong to the creature with the strongest body. Sometimes it belongs to the creature with the widest menu. So the next time you stand in front of a refrigerator disappointed by too many choices, remember the wet mud beside that ancient lake. Two human-like relatives walked there. One carried the strength of a chewing machine. The other carried hunger tools, movement, and options. Only one of those footprints eventually led to you.